Good morning and welcome. If you are joining us now in the world of Facebook, welcome. I'm Reverend G. Minister here at the Unitarian Universalist Community Church, and I'm delighted that you are choosing to spend this time with us. And I welcome every single one of you here in the sanctuary. It's good to be with each other again in person. When I was a kid and in school, we had history lessons, and I didn't care for them. I am lucky if I remember the year of my birth. I'm not good with dates. And I really didn't enjoy it. I thought it was dry and this happened so long ago, and so what's the point? Then I started later, much later. I read a book. It was a historical novel, and on the Borgias. So it's Pope in Rome, and of course he had a lot of kids, even though he was a Catholic priest, a Pope, right? And that's the first time I realized that history matters, that it has implications on our lives today. And I started to read history differently. And I started to look at history differently. And then I began to just love it. So today is one of those days when we will journey way back in time. I mean, way back in time. Here is what I was wondering about as I was creating my talk for today. Why is it that there are cultures in this world? For instance, the Native Americans, right? And they have this 7-generation principle that the decisions they make today, they think ahead for 7 generations and try to figure out how it would impact the lives of the 7th generation, this decision today. And if their best thinking results in assessing that it will harm that generation, they will not make that decision. And then you look at Wall Street, or you look at our culture, and we don't even look ahead 7 months. All we care about is quarterism, right? Quarter turn. What are the profits for a quarter of a year? And that's what we really focus. We try to maximize those profits without having any forward thinking. So I thought, why is that? Where does that come from? How far back should I go in history to find the reason for that? So I kept peeling back. So now I'm going to take you to about the 12th, 13th century before our era. The Jews are wandering in the desert. This is way before the Old Testament was ever written. And the Jews are wandering in the desert. No holy book yet. That doesn't happen till about the 10th century, right? So supposedly Moses is in the desert wandering with the Jews. And they have a monotheistic God. And initially, when this monotheistic God is first conceptualized of, it's very different than the one that is actually then written down and well, there's a good word that I can't think of anyway, but the one that is registered in the Old Testament in the Bible. So through this time that they are wandering in the desert, of course, they come in touch with people. And most of the people, actually, all the people that are around them are polytheistic. And there is a difference between their gods and the monotheistic God of the Jews. There's a huge difference. So in the Bible, in the Old Testament, it is registered that they wander for 40 years. Well, the 40 years was much longer than 40 years, but that's how it's registered in the Bible. And in that time, they're in the desert, and then they make their way to Canaan, which they believe this monotheistic God gave them. And they fight for this land, and then they overtake the people of Canaan. And the Canaanites worship, their main goddess is Ashtaroth, and she is the goddess of fertility of the earth. And her male counterpart is Baal, B-A-L, Baal. I don't know how to pronounce, but in Hungarian I pronounce it Baal, or also in Hebrew I would pronounce it Baal. And he is also, so these are gods that are of the earth. When people worship these gods, they also worship the earth. It gives the very earth that we walk on, that we are part of, by the way, a sanctity, because these gods are of the earth. Now, in contrast, this monotheistic God of the Jews is from the skies above. It has nothing to do with the earth. In fact, the earth is viewed as the source of toil, hardship. It's the punishment of living hard on this earth because they dared eat of the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden. God tells them, you cannot eat of this fruit, the fruit of knowledge. So they eat of the forbidden fruit, and then their punishment immediately is to toil hard on this earth. So the earth is considered as something difficult. It's something to overcome. It's something to conquer. So, in the polytheistic understanding of the world and of the deities, the earth is to be worshipped. It has a sanctity. We have to care of it because, well, our gods are of it. And then we understand that so are we, part of this nature. It is what Native Americans also understand, that the cycles of the earth are also our natural cycles, and we are one with it. And the God of the Jews doesn't live in the cycles of the earth. It lives in history. It lives in the skies above. And from there, he judges. And you are right. During that wandering in the desert, the Jews have turned this monotheistic God into a he, into a male, judgmental, powerful being. And then they enter the land of the Canaanites and they conquer them. And they understand that our God of the sky is better, stronger than these gods. Otherwise, we never would have conquered the people of the Canaanites. But our God has come to our rescue, to our help. And now, therefore, our God is a better God. That's the all-powerful, mighty God. Not these. These are not even gods. These are just, these people came up with these ideas. But that's the one that matters. And then, which God image shapes the Western world? It's that God. It's the God that may be in the wind. But the wind is just touching the earth. It's not of the earth. And then Christianity, of course, emerges from this understanding of God. And Jesus, who is a product of his environment, right? So they also turn him into God. And then so he can also not be of this world. In fact, there's a quote I quote from the New Testament, we are on this earth, but not of this earth. We are on this earth, but not of this earth. I think Paul says that. So Jesus has to be brought into this world, part of this world, but not of this world, right? How do we do that? Well, we will say that he was born of a virgin, because back in the day they didn't understand that women also contributed to the DNA of the child. They thought that the seed of the man had contained life already, and the woman is nothing but an incubator. So it contributed nothing but allowed for the possibility of that seed to grow and turn into a child. And it's not until 1710, I think, that they realized that, oh, the women also contribute to the DNA. So this whole virgin birth is no longer stands, right? So they bring Jesus into this earth, into this world through virgin birth. So therefore, his God nature is not questionable. God impregnated Mary. Mary contributed nothing other than the incubator, the oven, right? For this child to develop and be born. So therefore, Jesus is fully God. And then they had to find a way to also catapult him off the earth, so it can be there with God. So that's when Pentecost happens, and Jesus ascends into the heavens. And now it's done. So when history begins, in the beginning, God is in everything and everyone. Then with polytheism, God is among us. So we still have to be very careful, because God is among us. And in monotheism, God doesn't live with us. And then the next emphasis is being put not even on this earth and on this life, but our real life begins in heaven, right? That's what we truly work for. So this life is just here to toil. We just have to do this. This is a must area place that we must go through in order to enter our real reward, the heaven, or punishment, hell, right? So how far removed are we then from earth, Mother Earth? It's just a place of toil. It's just a must be in between place before we get to either heaven or hell. So, and this is the philosophy that influenced the Western world. And it's the Western world which then exploited the earth. I mean, there it is in the Bible. It says, multiply and subdue the earth. Well, we've done a good job of both. We've multiplied to a degree that this earth can no longer support our numbers, at least not with the lifestyles that we are accustomed to. And then we subdued the earth. We just looked at it as something that needs to be conquered, that needs to be overcome. And we no longer had respect, awe. There was no sanctity. In fact, Christianity, if you will, secularized the earth. There's nothing sacred about it. It's just a thing that we can exploit endlessly. So bad theology leads to bad ecology. Good ecology hopefully leads to good theology. And hopefully good theology can lead to good ecology. So, of course, what now? And I think, and it's not a popular thought, not in this Western culture. This God that was created while the Jews wandered in the desert. When there were few people on this planet Earth, when consequences were so far removed from how we treated the earth, because there were few of us, and our means, those humans' means, were so limited, they couldn't do that much damage. So the God that was created while wandering in the desert for all those years, that God must die. And instead, if we have a need for God, then we must create one of love, one that understands that earth and life are synonymous, a God of acceptance and inclusivity, a God that is concerned with life here on earth, a God that understands consequences. That is if we have a need for God. That's the God we should create. Now I know that the popular belief is that God created humankind and not the other way around. I just don't buy that. I have said this before, that I think it was Aristotle who said, if horses had a god, it would look a whole lot like a horse. Which is why our God looks a lot like a male, strong, powerful, vindictive, jealous. If we could create a God once, we can do it again if we have to. Also in Christianity, there is this concept of being born again, born a second time. And so when you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and your Savior, that's when you're born again. And born again means that you are a child once again. And children are taken care of. And it spreads another dangerous message. That now we have a parent who is God, who lives in the skies, and he will take care of us. He will intervene on our behalf. He will not let us perish. Furthermore, he will not give us more than what we can bear. Would he? Tell that to the Jews in concentration camps. Where was God when the tsunami came? Where is God when children are being abused? Believing that there is a God who intervenes on our behalf is indeed a dangerous belief. And children have no responsibilities because their parents are responsible for them, right? Being born again means that we are children once more, and therefore we have no responsibility because God takes care. So God will also find a way to deal with this whole global warming, and we don't really have to apply ourselves to it. And that is a dangerous belief. But our beliefs are our religion, and religion we must practice. So it matters what we believe. And if we need a God, let that be the God of love, the God of earth, the God of inclusivity. Because these beliefs shape our current days. The God that the Jews created back then. And that belief system has led to our problems here today. So I was going to talk today about recycling or not recycling, but then I thought, my goodness, who am I to talk about that when we're going to have the expert here with us today? I will let her and her group in a minute talk about that. And I will instead give you the historical background of where this belief system came up and created the necessity of recycling or not recycling. And furthermore, whether that is the question or not. And oh, sorry about that. And as I had dabbled into educating myself, I realized that, well, recycling is not all what it's made out to be. But I'm sure maybe you will speak into that. So my closing words are these. Our beliefs matter. That let us be adults and not born again babies. Let us be adults with responsibilities who understand consequences. If we have a need to create a God, may that be the God of love and inclusivity, and the God that is far removed from the earth must die, must be done away with. And then perhaps we can reshape our culture where we desecularize earth and we see it once again as sacred, and we see it once again that we are as much part of it as it is part of us. And that is hope for the future. And so it is. And we have special guests today. They are from the Kalamazoo Crisis Coalition, Kalamazoo Crisis Climate Coalition. Thank you very much. There were way too many CCCs. And you are a professor at Western University. You were our guest. We were trying to figure it out maybe a year ago on one of those Thursdays, and we resonated so well. And so here she is, my new best friend. Please.
Thank you. I always need a new best friend. I appreciate that very much. So my name is Dr. Denise Keele. I'm a professor at Western. I lead our climate change working group there. And it's my privilege to be here with you all today and to represent the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition. Thank you, Reverend G, for that sermon. And thanks to Miriam, even though she's downstairs, for organizing all of this and our tech team and making this happen. Deep Time Reckoning is a really wonderful sermon to follow, because I come here to tell you, welcome to the Anthropocene. We indeed are living in a very historic time. That is the buildup and lead up of our actions for centuries. It's called the Anthropocene because this is the first time in history that we can say what's shaping the earth is not geologic forces. It's us. We are the primary driver of systems change. That's some history to comprehend. Coming from the scientific point of view, the science and causes of consequences of climate change have been known for a really long time as well. There's a recent report, if you don't follow these things, it's called the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. It's a worldwide group of the best scientists, social scientists, humanists from around the globe. I'm going to quote from their recent report just this last February. Human-induced climate change, including more frequent and intense extreme events, has caused widespread adverse impacts and related losses and damages to nature and people. Across sectors and regions, the most vulnerable people and systems are observed to be disproportionately affected. The rise in weather and climate extremes has led to some irreversible impacts as natural and human systems are pushed beyond their ability to adapt. In 2019, even our own United States assessment on climate change found that we're already experiencing the effects. We just might not recognize it. Whether we know it or not, it's happening to us right now in our own epoch in time, the Anthropocene. Similar assessments of our own backyard, climate change in the Great Lakes region in Southwest Michigan, are increasingly experiencing the predicted effects of climate change. I love the Mark Twain quote, and that's Michigan. These extreme events are only going to continue. One of the major predictions for our area is a 33% increase in precipitation. So that comes as snow, or it comes as the floods in Portage and Kalamazoo that close down our businesses and roads every spring now, or that comes in the extreme heat of the summer. Again, I want to stress that these environmental and economic hardships are felt disproportionately by the most vulnerable citizens in our community first. Indeed, the moral case to address climate change becomes even greater when we recognize who is suffering the most right now. Marginalized populations here in Southwest Michigan for sure, but as Reverend G noted, Indigenous peoples around the world, they're the most adversely affected, despite the fact that their low carbon lifestyles have done almost nothing to contribute to this current climate crisis. That's heavy. I can feel you feeling that with me. I know you care. People all around the world care. They care deeply about the impacts on nature and themselves. And they are rising up all over the world in a variety of social, political movements, religious movements, like the one you heard today. States, cities, corporations, nations are all trying to pledge and reduce their greenhouse gases. It's not enough. While polling indicates that concern about climate change and emissions are at all-time highs, most of us also say we're not participating in an active campaign, to take Reverend G's words, to take our own responsibility for our own lives and our own place in history. Most of us aren't participating in those kinds of campaigns. Most folks wouldn't know how to contact an elected official, much less that they think they would have an influence or what they should say. In social science, in my world, we call this the attitude-behavior gap. We need to close that gap in order to achieve the necessary cultural shifts. Now is the moment to relearn the nature-based solutions that our elders and Indigenous peoples, with their collective knowledge of the land, sky, and sea, have long been aware of, and embrace a worldview of respect, of living within natural systems. Now is the moment to understand that in the last decade, scientists and engineers have dropped the cost of solar and wind power by an order of magnitude to the point where it's some of the cheapest power on Earth. The best reason to deploy renewable energy immediately is to ward off the climate crisis. The second best reason is to stop the killing of 9 million people annually who die from breathing in the particulates that fossil fuel combustion produces. A few years ago at Western Michigan University, our groups hosted former President of Ireland and UN Special Envoy on Climate Change, Mary Robinson. Skip Lee, one of our members, is personing a table at the back there. Her book is back there. And in her speech, I'll never forget, she gave us words of advice. And she said, you got to do 3 things. And the first thing is to take personal action. So should you recycle? Yes. Even if it doesn't all go where it's supposed to go, and it might not be the perfect solution, yes. I don't drive a car. Tim Tessar had to bring me here this morning to be with you all. Pick something that you can do in your own life. I see you're going to do a whole month of activities. Try to make one of those a habit and stick with it. It really is helpful to have a place of action for yourself where you're grounded from to take further action from. Because the second thing that Mary Robinson says we have to do is then you got to join a group. You got to get together with other people and take what we call collective action, to work with others, particularly to influence that larger social, cultural, even religious worldview change. We're seeing again this sea change in public concern. Over 70% of Americans now believe global warming is happening, and over 2/3 are concerned. That means that every 6 to 7 of the 10 people that you encounter every day get it. You can talk to them about this. You can bring it up. You can feel safe in those conversations and get them to be part of the largest social movement for climate mobilization. Her third piece of advice was then you also need a moon shot. Just like we said we'll pledge in 10 years, we will be on the moon, and we did it. Something that it just seems so inspiring and so undoable that it challenges us to try to meet this historic moment. So following this advice in our own community, knowing that our own actions will either contribute to further climate disruption or to healing, several community leaders formed the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition to make an impact right here on the ground where we work, where we play, and where we live together. We were motivated by the scientific case for urgent action and inspired by these larger social movements, in particular, the Fridays for Future movement and the climate strike held by Greta Thunberg. So I want to take a little time and tell you about what the coalition does and how we go about our work. Our mission that you saw a little bit earlier is to mobilize collective action to achieve immediate and drastic reductions in greenhouse gas emissions and rapid adoption of renewable energy through a transition grounded in social, racial, economic, and environmental justice. Some of our guiding principles about how we do this work together. We welcome viewpoint diversity. We operate with transparency and we try to cast a wide net of inclusion. Everybody has a stake in this historic moment. We recognize climate as a commons on which all life depends. Collective action is our shared responsibility and the path forward of resilience and adaptation. We try to inspire positive action. We believe that action begets hope. Our focus is on those personal transformations and the larger social and cultural change. We adhere to scientific integrity, and we are nonpartisan, but not apolitical, meaning we direct our energy and resources to advocating for policies and platforms, but we don't endorse candidates or political parties. A little bit in depth about the strategies, the how, the things that we actually do. Our first kind of way that we commit to those missions and principles is that we acknowledge the interrelated climate, ecological, economic, and public health crisis. All of these things are interrelated. Racial justice is climate justice. We know that there are issues, jobs, pandemic safety, housing, policing, and they compete for our time and attention. And the seeming tensions among those issues can make life choices and priorities difficult. However, rather than as separate, we can instead understand these issues as interrelated and understand that climate change is going to affect any of our other decisions about well-being in any other area. A second way that we commit to that mission and those guiding principles, what do we actually do? We unite businesses, individuals, governmental entities, youth groups, faith groups, peace groups, educational, environmental, and climate groups. In just 3 short years, we have a network of about 2,000 individuals and over 40 affiliates right here in Kalamazoo County that are all working on this together. It's really a beautiful thing. A third way that we try to do this work is we try to serve as our community's resource for that science-based climate action and learning. Specifically here, our agenda is a free public series modeled after Greta Thunberg's Fridays for Future. During the pandemic, we've been meeting virtually every second and fourth Fridays at noon. Come join us. The goal of this series is to provide the community with a broad understanding of both the science and also the human relationship to climate change, social causes, challenges. We include outreach opportunities to effectively address the climate crisis. These talks range from policy to food and eating, to farming, to energy systems, what some of the businesses are doing. It's a really, really wide range. Again, that interrelated concept guides a lot of our work. We also host a book club every second Tuesday, and Reverend G, whether you know it or not, your sermon is essentially the heart of the argument for our next book club, which will be April 12th, The Nutmeg's Curse, a parable for a planet in crisis by Amitav Ghosh, who's one of the world's leading writers and essayists. He's an Indian native born, and his whole thesis is exactly your sermon. And it is about how the history of oppression of at least the last 500 to 1,000 years is why we are experiencing the climate crisis today. That it is rooted in those same misunderstandings or colonial oppression. So nice job, good summary of the book. Now they don't even have to read it. We don't make you read. Come and join the discussion. And he's going to be here virtually to also give a public talk that night so you can hear some of how he frames these very same issues. The last big thing that we do to activate that mission and all of our affiliates is we direct initiatives that influence government, education, other institutions to take measurable action. Our first event in 2019 was to organize a global climate strike right here in Kalamazoo that drew about 1,500 participants. We've hosted climate crisis town halls with local elected officials and a candidate forum for state house seats to raise awareness about how we can become climate voters. We've influenced local governments to pass climate emergency declarations. The city of Battle Creek, city of Kalamazoo, city of Portage, county of Kalamazoo, Kalamazoo Township, and Oshtemo Township have all declared a climate emergency. Now we're working with all of those communities in order to adopt a climate action plan, to reorder and reimagine what we need in renewable energy, in worldviews, in how we get around, how we feed ourselves, the basics of life. We have an opportunity to return to how we organize ourselves. Back to Mary Robinson's advice. Yes, take personal action. Do something to ground yourself in this movement. And I hope you can see how you could join the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition and take that second thing, that collective action. Come be with others who know how to help do this. What about that moonshot? For me personally, I don't speak for the whole coalition here, but my moonshot is I want Kalamazoo County, Southwest Michigan, to be the most sustainable place to live in the entire universe. We can, that's a moonshot, right? I could go on and on, as you can probably tell. My colleagues are here with me today as well. Skip Lee, a member at large and really working hard on our coordinating community, is back at the table there. We'll stay as long as anyone wants to chat. He can tell you all about ways to get signed up on our email list so you're aware of all these events and things that are happening, how to get involved and share your input. I hope I've left you with really 3 main points. Climate crisis is an emergency, and it's more than a physical and science emergency. It's a crisis of morals. And that's what Reverend G was really talking about, and that we need to take urgent action, that the best way to take that action is to do so together. That's what we are all about. And hopefully you've learned a little bit about the coalition and how we try to be both effective and empathetic to face the fear and despair that we often feel when we learn about the climate crisis, and make that head on with energy and optimism for our own abilities to inspire positive action and achieve a livable world. It's not too late to make a difference and to join or support us now. What we do right now will matter for hundreds of thousands of years. I have with me a colleague from our affiliates that has some specific actions as well. So again, we have about 40 different groups that work with us. One of the most active in the area is Citizens Climate Lobby. And Tim Tessar is here to talk about that. And he's done me the favor of looking up some of your Unitarian Universal actions at some higher levels. And he can tell you a little bit about a specific action that we can take right now. For now, I will leave you. Thank you for having us and hosting us. And thank you so much for all the work you are already doing. I hope that we can continue to work together. Tim.
Thank you, Denise. And like you, I could go on endlessly talking about this subject because I've been active in this area for about 10 years now, and it's a daily concern of mine. But I'll try to be brief. Thank you, Reverend Gee and congregation, for the honor and privilege of being here with you this morning. And I want to emphasize that the Unitarian Universalist Association has been on top of this issue for a long time. in their 2006 statement of conscience, I will quote, "We are part of this world and its destiny is our own. Life on this planet will be gravely affected unless we embrace new practices, ethics, and values to guide our lives on a warming Earth." And that's from 2006. As Denise mentioned, I represent and work with an organization called Citizens Climate Lobby, reflected in my shirt here. We have local, it's an international organization, but we have a local chapter that meets on a regular basis. And we primarily work in promoting a collective action, although I support individual actions also very much, a collective action in the form of legislation, which has been introduced into our Congress, something called the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, which would impose a carbon tax on fossil fuels, raise money through the tax, which would be returned to citizens as a dividend. And I won't go any further into it than that. But the Unitarian Universal Association has also endorsed the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. And I will quote, "These are all excellent strategies for combating climate change," referring to the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. I have a handout here, which is available on the table in the back. If you're interested in being actively engaged with a local group, which is what drew me to the Citizens Climate Lobby, this would be one way to do that, as well as participating in the Climate Crisis Coalition. And I will conclude by saying, yes, climate change is happening. The world is experiencing its effects already, especially in the global South, where the people who are least responsible are most affected. But I want to bring you a message of hope. And I like to summarize that up by saying, the more we do, the less bad it will be. So please engage on this issue. Thank you.